So hello everybody, welcome to Meet the Devs episode 9, 10. I'm not sure. It's the one after EA.
Nine. It's
9.
nine.
Okay, episode 9.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so last week we had a pretty big event. We finally launched the game in early access. And yeah, we got Chris here again to talk about that. I bet you guys have a bunch of questions. We'll take some questions at the end, as per tradition. But for now, I'm just, Chris, the floor is all yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi
Actually,
everybody. I don't know if you've just joined us. I know we have a lot of new folks with us. My name is Chris Kaleki, founder CEO here at Notorious. Yeah, pleasure to meet you guys. Yeah, so here to talk about 1 week after early access. We're basically here 1 week later. Yeah, let's just talk about first really quickly about capping what happened and the experience. Um, there was some good and there were some bad things that happened on launch day. We are a really small team, like the whole dev team is around 30 people or so. And we have one server engineer. And so we did try testing as many things as we could, like during all the alpha playtests. We probably had alpha playtests for around a year or so. And I could see some people in the chat who joined during those alpha playtests, and thank you so much for that. It really helped with fixing a lot of things with the game and helping us find the magic of what we wanted the game to be. And you guys are really critical for that, so thank you. I have a lot of gratitude about with that with for you for that one. Yeah, so it's kind of the biggest issues on launch day. There was two big ones. One was like some server issues. So really with like, modern day cloud computing with servers, it kind of expands and contracts and it's really nice for that. But there was one thing with the server that couldn't do that. We had requests like more capacity basically. And that took like basically 50 minutes, which was like, it felt like an eternity. And after we did that, it kind of helped with, all the server issues kind of resolved, and that was good. And then there was a sound bug, those of you who were here day one know what I'm talking about, like the crackling sound. And that was really from like a memory leak that happened with sound. It was really amazing to see the team kind of leap onto this bug. We created a new build internally and tested it very quickly and figured it out before the end of the day and shipped the fix before the end of the day. Um, so that's pretty amazing. But despite that, a lot of people, players were grumpy and gave us some negative reviews on Steam, which I personally, I get that, and I don't disagree with the players who did that. Um, but obviously for the future of the game and studio and things like that, making sure that players are enjoying the game and it has a good reception, especially at release, is important. And so we worked a lot to do hot fixes throughout the day and the week to address all the big issues that were happening. And it was really awesome to see that we went from like kind of mostly negative in the beginning to mixed and then mostly positive within 3 days, which a lot of folks reached out to me like, wow, that really doesn't happen, that's crazy. And so we have a lot of work to do. I was reading a lot of the reviews on Steam or in the discussion, like on our Discord, talking to you, playing with you, and we have a lot of more work to do. And I'm going to talk about that today in this during this call. But yeah, one thing I really love, I'm really relieved about, and we discovered this during the alpha, but the good thing is that the game is a good game. I think it's a fun game. A lot of people in the team are just kind of addicted to it, myself included, and and so I'm really happy about that. Every review we usually get, players, they'll have some gripes and things like that, which makes perfect sense. But usually, like I see a lot of potential. Really happy with the core of the game. Yeah, more work to do. And anyway, we'll talk about this. But anything you want to talk about, saw in chat. I haven't been looking, Andre, before we move on to the next slide.
Everyone in chat is talking about how much Song can bench, and they're talking about killing frogs. We have
Oh,
their full
okay.
attention.
Yeah, sounds like our community. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Um, Next slide. So here's some like kind of fun stats we collected and put together. The average time spent in Greenwood is around like 13 minutes. Obviously Greenwood does have a timer around 30 minutes, and so usually players will kind of leave the session not by the end of the timer, but usually by when they fill up their bags or get something good and want to leave, or they run out of consumables, that sort of thing. And so really the timer is just there as kind of a stopgap. But anyway, it's kind of interesting to see around like 13. Oh, are people not seeing the slide? Can you see it, Andre?
I can see it, yeah.
Okay.
They can see it.
Um, anyway, all right, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, average time till death is 5 minutes. So that's also kind of an interesting one. Some of the dangerous creatures I don't think it would surprise anybody who's playing is skeleton archer is pretty good, pretty crazy. Even the melee, I think, if you go up there, you get slapped a bit. Um, and the mage is kind of probably one of the craziest ones. One thing I kind of learned playing the mage, I actually think the mage is harder for range than melee because it just chain guns those fireballs at you, and you really kind of have the line of sight. You can't like have you have no you don't have enough stamina to evade every single fireball. So anyway, most NPC kills, players who get the most, or classes who get the most NPC kills was warrior, hunter, priest, and rogue last, which kind of makes sense. The rogue is really strong. We'll talk about that too, but strong against players, but then trickier to fight creatures, which is kind of intentional as well. And then the most player kills, rogue and warrior got the most, and then hunter and priest were basically equal, which was kind of interesting, like literally the same. The difference between rogue and warrior, probably would surprise players because I know players are kind of feel like rogues are really strong, and they kind of are. But it was only like a very small differential, like really tiny. I don't have the data here, but it was like 0.2% or something like, or zero point 0.2 in the stat. So, but anyway, yeah, the most played class in the game right now is the rogue, and then secondly is the hunter. Third is the or hunter and warrior tie for a second, and then the last is priest, which you kind of would expect. It's sort of a support class, a little bit niche. Um, and then or sorry, that was classes created, and then classes played. Yeah, rogue is top, then warrior, then hunter, then priest. Um, yeah, okay. Anything you want to talk about in this slide, Andre, before we move on? I will kind of talk about rogues in general, or just some of these class balance things. This is a big thing I'm going to talk about. Fortunately, I didn't get time to put slides up here for that, but I'll just kind of talk through it.
No, I think you covered everything. People are, I think, it was kind of like to be expected that rogues got the most player kills, and like you said, you'll talk more about that soon. And people,
Yeah,
if,
yeah.
if if people have questions, again, we'll take questions in a little bit when Chris is done with the slides. So if you have questions, you can prepare
Right.
them, and yeah, you can raise your hand. I'll bring you up on stage. Yeah, you can keep going.
Yeah, it's usually tradition in these to bring people up to stage and just kind of talk with us and ask a question. But feel free to just ask your question in chat
Yeah.
too, and Andre will pull out a few of them, and we'll talk about those too. So I kind of went through, really all of your feedback through people submitting it to me directly, to the Discord, through Steam reviews, through Steam discussions, that sort of thing. Kind of the top three kind of concerns players or things that players wish the game had, which is not kind of reflected in this slide yet, but is really the number one is just kind of more content, more progression, that sort of thing. Which is good news. We're working on that, and we'll talk about that too probably today. Second one is just is is a PvE mode or PvE content or that sort of thing. If you joined us for the last Meet the Devs, we talked about the long-term vision of Legacy, and you could watch. I encourage you to watch that video. It's on YouTube. I do talk about the long-term vision and how we do want to build Legacy, the IP, to add more PvE content, and we have a lot of ambitious goals in that respect. In the short term, though, we're not going to be adding dedicated PvE content anytime soon, but it is something that we are considering and have plans to do. But anyway, and then the third one is just a kind of general combat feedback and that sort of thing, which we're always improving it. Those of you who've been in the pre-alpha for a long time know that we've been iterating and improving combat for a long time, and we'll continue to do so. But anyways, kind of these other top issues are the ones specifically from EA release. The top one is bugs. I know there's a bunch of nasty bugs right now. One of them is like with a priest levitate, that you kind of get stuck. This happens when you mantle, I believe, and like you get stuck in this like levitate state and you have to like get hit. It's kind of funny to just kind of fly around, I suppose. But
You're stuck. You're stuck
that is
flying.
something. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's one of the nasty bugs. Another one is there's a warrior bug with like double damage that we know about that we have a fix already prepared. And there's other various little bugs with class abilities and that sort of thing. And I'll talk about like the timeline of when we're fixing these after this. Yeah, so other class balance issues, I was alluding to this in the previous slide. One is kind of rogues in general. I think we're 1 week in to the game, and I've already kind of seen some of the meta and some of the assumptions and some of the vibes shift through just even this last week. I do think rogues are somewhat kind of strong. There's a few reasons for this. One is we changed, and this is really my fault. We changed Phantom Dagger and without very little testing. Phantom Dagger has been in the game for a long time, but never really quite saw the vision that I wanted for it, which is what it is now, but it's a little kind of good. Probably the shadow dot is a little good. The cooldown is kind of good. That sort of thing. So we're going to, address some of that for sure. There's other little things with the rogues as well that we'll take a look at. Nothing quite I want to announce just yet because we just kind of, just dust is settling a little bit after EA release, and so we're kind of having conversations internally about it. And so I don't want to say anything that 100% we won't do or that sort of thing. But we have a lot of knobs to turn. Legacy is that's a lot of class mechanics and so many what designers call knobs, like things we could tune and adjust, which is amazing. And so super confident we can make a better experience for sure. And then the second one is the Warrior Death Ball. The Death Ball is one of the latest additions in weapons. The last two we've added is the Death Ball and then also the Priest Sword and Buckler. And I know that players really like them, and I can tell there's some like dedicated players who just only play these weapons because they just enjoy the gameplay of them. The Death Ball is probably a bit too good. And so it's another thing we're kind of looking at. Again, there's also that kind of double damage warrior bug that will be fixed shortly. That is well. But anyway, those are like the two big things that players talk about. There's also some, I'll talk about this maybe a little bit later when we talk about classes in general. I suppose everybody will have class balance questions, but um, obviously Legacy has melee and ranged. And usually in this genre, it's very hard in PvP games if you're going to have melee and range, especially RPG ones. I'm sure a bunch of people have played games like that where range usually dominates because melee has to get into melee ranged with ranged, and so it's hard to make range or melee feel good. And so despite the warrior and rogue kind of feeling pretty good right now, it is a good thing because you do kind of want it's easier to make ranged good than it is for melee. And so anyway, there's some tuning between melee and range that we have to some knobs again there we need to tune, but I wouldn't say it's far off. I think you'd be surprised by very small changes and how those can affect things. But anyways, that is another thing that we're looking at. Third one, scissors. It's funny because you know I don't think we intended for the scissors to be as rare as they are, but we did want some items in the game. We call them key items that are required to unlock the lodge upgrades or to do different milestones in the game, to be somewhat rare and feel like it's exciting when you loot it. Scissors is kind of one of those, probably the saw until you get level 2 of the crafting bench. the vendor favor items. There's a number of these. And so they're important for the game because you want to feel like, wow, I found something and it's exciting. But then there's a balance between like, I can never find this thing that's so frustrating versus like it's exciting, right? And so one thing that we added recently is the bartering on the goblin. And so, for example, he can barter you for the pillow. I think, gosh, what else is there? The Infernal book. There's a
Yes.
few things that the goblin can barter for. And so, if you get really bad luck or if you get really lucky with some items, you can there's a solution there. And so we'll probably think about fleshing that out further for any of these items that we feel like are too tricky to get. Um, so that's kind of my comments there. We did do a slight little like stealth fix or update for the scissors, so they drop a little bit more now than before. Because again, they were never intended to be like this crazy of a drop of an item. We have actually some plan for the future for these that will be even crazier, or more rare. Um, but anyway, that's my comment on that. Stash size. So stash size, we've previously with Legacy in our alpha playtest, we never had a playtest that went over a week. And so, and never, certainly never one that had this many players. And so, it's hard to triangulate what a good stash size is. And it's very easy to add more stash. It's harder to take it away from players because, you guys will get grumpy, and I understand that. And so we're trying to figure out like what the right stash size is. It's not intended to be like painful experience in the game that you have, your stash is full, but we also want stash to feel meaningful. And so, anyways, we're hearing you on that feedback. I have something to talk about there later in one of the hotfixes, but yeah, so that's one thing that we hear a lot from you guys. Morgthog. Morgthog is the first kind of real boss in the game. We call him the Ogre King as well. He's the guy in the southeast, the cave. And yeah, try as we might, making a world boss in the level, because one of our goals with him is that he's kind of like feels like a raid boss from like a MMO or like from an ARPG or something, like kind of an encounter. And then also we want him to be in the world so players can kind of gank you. There's like interesting stories that can happen when players are fighting the raid boss in an open world rather than it being an instance. So anyways, it's challenging to design these encounters and then also make it so they can't be cheese. Basically, it's very easy if we just have a shoebox essentially and he's in there and it's flat. It's like it has a portal, that sort of thing. So anyways, yeah, we know about some of the cheese things. So what we're going to do, actually, I'll announce what we're doing for that. But anyway, that's one thing that you guys have brought up. And then the last one is maybe a little smaller in terms of number of voices here, but it's one thing that we do care about is growing the audience and growing the regions. And one is that there is really high ping in the Southeast Asia, Singapore, these areas. And so we're going to add a Southeast Asia server as well. We added one for Australia, New Zealand, and I forget the other one. South America. And so now, yeah, this is going to be a new addition that we're going to add as well. So those are really kind of the top issues we've heard. I know there's more, out there, but in terms of like top ones, these are them. Anything you want to add there, Andre, before I move on?
I just wanted to address a couple of stuff about the class balance, just like because I've seen them mentioned in
Yeah.
chat, and I wanted to just acknowledge that we know these also exist. So obviously, you mentioned the warrior doing double damage with the death ball. That's again, I'm not sure if that's fixed, but might have been fixed already. Just waiting for a push. But I'm not sure.
That hasn't been fixed yet.
Oh, it
Yeah,
hasn't?
yeah. That fix will go out shortly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and also warrior with rampage. We know that's no, it's not fixed live yet, but I think we fixed it internally. Yeah, rampage is very strong. Warhorn is very strong. And then on the rogue side, we know there's a bug with creep. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want too many people exploiting it. And if you know, you know that creep is bugged. Also, there's been a new meta developing with rogues just kiting people, which when we tested the games ourselves, we'd never really even thought about doing that. So there's like new metas shifting all the time apparently. And just in general, rather than just nerfing classes, I think we might just go with a different approach and try to just buff what's underperforming and just keep the game fun for everyone. But like Chris said, it's a bit early to like speak specifics on what changes we're gonna make.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
two comments what you said there. One is we did I mean at least I did know that like the dot meta could exist. Like for example, Rogues versus Warriors, it is somewhat intended that you kind of kite them around, you kind of dot them and kind of,
mm-hmm,
drain them out there because if you fight a warrior one versus one as a rogue, warriors when they enrage, they get a slight kind of like absorption. And so you kind of don't want to fight them while they're enraged. So you kind of like it's a little like back and forth kind of encounter there. It's like what you're intended to do. But I think the Phantom Dagger dot is a little too strong, and so we're going to
mm-hmm,
look at that for sure. Um, yeah, and then the other thing, yeah. So again, we have nothing really to kind of announce necessarily on specifics on the class balance things, but um, for sure, like it's going to be it's going to be a blend of maybe some reductions or some nerfs and then some buffs as well. There are some probably more buffs and nerfs, I would assume, because I actually don't think things are that far off. But
mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and
All
yeah,
right.
that's pretty much it.
Cool, cool. So we're going to be doing a hotfix later today. Hopefully like in a few hours. But we will see because it can't promise anything. It's something we're working on. So from some fixes we're going to be doing is the priest levitate ascend bug, the warrior deathball damage bug. There's a bug where you can accidentally delete rings by control clicking. That's not intended. We'll
Yep.
be fixing that. And then there's some also bugs with the compass, when it looks like your party is over here and they're not. We're fixing that as well. We're going to be taking off some loot from Morkthog temporarily. So we talked a lot about should we just take out Morkthog? Should we try to all these risky hot fixes to try to fix um, things in the room. And so for now, we're going to just kind of remove some of his loot, some of the epics. And he's going to have kind of similar loot as the regular ogre. However, he'll still count if you do for the quest. And then we'll restore this shortly after, and I'll talk about that later. And then there's some vendor loot updates we're doing. This is kind of like surgical polish updates, but the tailor will have some better items in her sell tab or buy tab rather. Actually, oops, that's a bug. And the alchemist will also sell common potions. Oh, I didn't finish writing that. At I forget what level, or like level 2 or level 3 or something like that. So if you don't ran out of field lilies, you could just buy some from the goblin for gold. Um, uh, and then, like I mentioned, we're going to be adding Southeast Asia servers. So this hotfix again will be coming later today. Worst case, sometime tomorrow. Um, yeah, yeah. So look out for that one.
We've had like
Then we're going to be
15 patches
doing
already, I think.
Yeah, then we're going to be doing another hot fix. We're already like planning this one. This will be early next week. This will require the server to come down for a moment, and so there's some things we could hotfix just live, and it's simple. There's some things though that we can't do, and so we do have to take down the server briefly to do these, just so that because your data will be unsynced from the server, and you'll get a bunch of other bugs. And so basically, we're going to do that sometime, hopefully next week. Don't have a date on this yet. We're still preparing a bunch of things for this patch. But one big thing we're going to add is an additional stash tab for everybody. So we hear you on the stash issues, and so we're going to add a new stash tab, and we'll continue to monitor it and see how it goes and how it feels. One issue I also noticed is some players don't know that they could update the storage chest to increase stash tabs. And some of my friends are like, "Wow, I didn't know that," and so that's another kind of issue as well. But But anyway, so we're going to be doing that. And then other bugs that we're going to be doing in, by the way, Sung, message Andre, not me, if you want me to say something, or send me in Discord. Um, and then we're going to be doing other fixes with other bugs, like with Phantom Dagger. There's some World Geo Collision bugs we're also going to fix, and some other things I'm not quite ready to share yet next week. But if there's any other bugs that you feel are high priority, let us know. And chances are we kind of already know about them, and it's work in progress. But
Yeah, and it's like we're gonna like pack a bunch of bugs and fix them all in this hotfix, this one next week, like you said, because we need to take the servers down. Even the ogre cheese, we might fix that one next week because that one will require a server to be taken down for a little bit. So we're just packing as many of those as we
right,
can.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw someone mention the priest memory bug as well. So there is a bug with the priest. After you play the priest for a while, performance starts to drop. Um, we've found we've tracked that one down, and so we know kind of now what some of the cause of that is. It actually, I don't think is actually a memory thing. It's more of like an animation issue. And so we're working on a fix for that one too. So that may be a candidate to put in this patch as well, if it isn't in the last one, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
figure that out. Then, I've already talked about two hotfix patches we're planning. This is the third. This will be a little bigger patch that we have planned. So one of the bigger things here is we are going to do some class balance changes in this patch. So we're kind of pushing some of these into this patch. It's possible we may do some in hotfixes or address things before this patch in early next month. But other ones that we can't possibly do through hotfix, we will do these here. Do some quest updates, so maybe update some of their quest rewards on some of them, these sort of things, some polish there. One thing we notice is like there's a quest to kill other players, and we kind of moved it later. Like I think you have to be like level 15 or something, but in hindsight, maybe that was too high, and so we're going to change that. Character rename and deletions. This is a big ticket item that players mention a lot of, oops, I misspelled my character's name or that sort of thing. I have some regrets. And so unfortunately we weren't able to get this out for early access, but we are going to push this in this patch. VoIP. Yeah, VoIP. We do have VoIP, but it's a little like Xbox 360 vibes. But
Yeah.
we found the issue with this. It's not piped in the right sound buffer thingy majiggy. So we will be updating that as well. In this patch to be a bit better. And then, yeah, there's some level design changes that we can't do unless we basically regenerate the world, the map. And so that has to wait for a larger client patch. And so we'll be doing more level design fixes in this patch. One of the bigger ones here is going to be Morgthog's room. And so we're going to do some adjustments so that, basically uh, more more cheese updates. And so this one we're confident we think we will address kind of the issues there, and then we'll restore Morgthog back to having loot, and then may do some interesting change to that as well, but we can't talk about yet. But anyways, that is kind of what we're planning for this mini patch, and we'll continue to monitor things that maybe we should adjust or update or improve. And if it's larger ticket items that need a client build, they'll probably go into this one. Um, so this patch isn't really a content patch. It's more of like a larger patch that we have to do a client build for and update things. More content things is later on, which again, if you go back to the Meet the Devs that we did last week, I talk a lot about what we're going to be doing for the next content patch, which we're targeting sometime in the spring, late spring, that we're all focused working on as well right now. Um, and that's kind of a conclusion that I had here. Let me see. Yeah.
All
So
right.
now, usually at this point, we do kind of answer you guys' questions, and we'll bring some folks up to ask us questions. Yeah. So
Yeah.
raise your hand if you want
Yeah, raise your
to
hand.
speak.
Hello guys, thanks again for the lovely intro to your potential to your future changes, Chris. This is something that the community was really hoping for, that you guys would listen to those critical bugs and fixes. So we're looking forward to that. Apart from that, I have a proposal for something that you guys could add. Well, I have so many questions. I just had to pick one, and so I will pick
Mm-hmm.
one that I wanted to mention last week. Um, Hopefully, will help you in the future to know how to, implement this sort of mechanic or criteria to your elite or world bosses. Um, Something that I learned from several MMOs or RPGs that I played is that bosses would have three rules that they would follow in order to when engaging a player. The first rule would be that the boss would be able to see the player. This goes to, for example, someone would be, you know, hiding behind the door, which you guys already fixed, so that's a good one. The second rule would be can the boss reach the player? This is for something that um, priests would do, which you guys reshaped the chapel at the front where the armor is. There were some high walls that the priest would abuse the height of the wall by standing on it, and would just cheese the armor by making it get stuck at the bottom of the wall, or just get its face stuck on the wall, and they would just hit it from above. So you remove that, so that's somewhat of a fix. But the third one is a very tricky one. It's can they hit the player? Because again, we will take the example of the priest, of them standing on the wall. The boss would be able to see the priest. It would be able to reach the priest. But every time it swung its sword, the armor, since the swing was too low from the player's feet or from the player's hitbox, it would just swing its sword through the graphics and it would never hit the player. Maybe you could do something like that in the future for potential cheeses to bosses that you might think of implementing. That would be my proposal for something that
Yeah.
works.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think those three things are important. I think at this point the room should be good so that Morkthog will be able to hit players, and I think that's critical, right? And so yeah, totally agree, and hopefully look forward to the updates in that patch, and we'll be focused on that. I think another thing too with like open world bosses as well is to kind of keep the encounter interesting for assuming multiple players will be there. For example, world if you've ever played WoW, which I was a work designer on, a lot of them would be designed like, oh, if another player dies, they get buffed or something because it knows like a lot of players are just kind of dying and streaming in there and that sort of thing, or to accentuate like other PvP battles while fighting it. So we didn't do that quite with Morkthog yet. It's kind of our first one, but we will do some interesting things that accentuate PvP as well, or assuming other players or groups, third parties are there in the future. So look out for that. But yeah, thanks for your suggestion.
Sure thing. Thanks again, guys, for all your work.
Thank you for the question. Wait,
All right,
Katrina, I wanted to try to kick him myself. I never kicked anyone, so I don't know if I have to kick someone. I don't know how to do it. So next person I invite, let me kick you when you're done with the question. I need to test it.
Yeah, you just right click and then go to
disconnect, right?
Bring.
I think so.
No, not disconnect.
Oh.
That boots them out of the Discord. You don't want to do that.
Oh,
it's like move to stage or move the audience or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yeah. Also, Morthog was like pretty recent.
Move
right?
to
like
audience is the first one.
We added him kind of late in the development as well. That's why there's been a lot of
so we always
interesting ways to fight him.
We always had we always had an ogre, but it was like the standard ogre, and Morgthog was something we added late in development. But we're going to be improving him and making that a lot of fun. So,
Howdy, I was wondering if some classes are intended to be balanced around solo or multiplayer specifically.
Good question. Yeah, so all classes should be able to be solo in the game and then also be good in groups. There's some who may be slightly a little bit better in one of those. For example, I would say the priest and hunter are a little bit better. They shine a little more right now in groups than they do solos, at least in PvP. But I think if we do have little strengths there, they should be slight. They shouldn't be huge swings. So, yeah. For example, the priest early on in development, people were like, why do you have, priests are impossible to make solo, because they're healers. And the priest does have a heal, on the scepter and on the staff, but she also has the sword and buckler, which has no heal, and I think it's she's pretty strong and unique, soloing as well. And you could I solo with the priest and solos or that sort of thing, and I think it's reasonable. Is she going to be as best solo than say maybe the hunter or something like that? Maybe not. But one of the perks with the hunter, and one thing I didn't do this time, maybe I'll do it in the future, is kind of have up like what the vision of the strengths and weaknesses of all the classes are. And one of the strengths for the hunter is that she kind of excels solo PvE. And so that's why she has like 2 traps and she can kind of kite things around, and she's at ranged, and she has a lot of setup that she could do with traps and her bombs and that sort of thing. So, and obviously she's ranged and she can pin things and she could snare shot, etc. So that is kind of intended to be one of her strengths. The rogue is kind of intended to be strong at, obviously the rogue has a lot of escape and it has stealth, and so it is supposed to be intended that the rogue has an advantage. The rogue can choose which encounters he wants to do, right? And so if a player is fighting a mob or a player is roaming around the world, the rogue chooses what encounters he wants to do. The others kind of don't really have that option as much, although the range do have that. But anyways, I can ramble all day about this, but yeah, there is intended to be some slight strengths in some of the classes to be good solo or with a squad, but not so far into like I will never play this class solo or I never play it in group. If we ever have that problem, it is something that we need to address.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
all right,
thanks. Good question. Good question.
You. Nice
and right to the point. That was good.
Yeah, kick me.
I'm gonna kick you. That was easy. Yeah,
move
just move to audience. Yeah. Yep. All right, we got another question from Mika Nidra. Hello. I need to accept as well. Maybe they left by then. Should I invite someone else? Okay, I'm gonna invite Caleb as well. Maybe they both join. Who knows? Hello.
All right, so straight to the point. I think class progression right now is a bit. Not class progression. Vendor progression right now is a bit slow, mainly with armor and weaponsmith, and most of the gameplay is locked behind those two, like crafting and upgrading weapons. And I know what you guys did with the ossuary, helps get to that point. I think that do you guys have any plans on lowering the ossuary times and making progression for those two vendors like a little bit easier?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, the vendors right now have around like 6 levels. And it's not intended that you can kind of level them in like a week all, in one full go. So we're not quite sure like what a good time is. It should be a few weeks, but I do think they feel really grindy right now because basically like, yeah, I was just saying for the armor smith, you're just like crafting and reselling things to it. Something that we are doing that's in the roadmap is going to be vendor quests. Like they'll have their own quest line, and so it'll be a better experience leveling them. You have like things you could do, you get bigger chunks of experience that you gain while you level them up. So this is something we're targeting and trying to do for this spring patch. Don't know if we're going to get all the vendors or even 100% are going to get that system yet, but that is kind of the long-term idea. One thing we added between the last alpha playtest and early access release is vendor favors. So favor items are these items that you can find in the world that if you sell to them, they gain a chunk of experience. And so we have those. we're talking about maybe making those a little more common, or maybe we could also add another tier, like a lesser tier. The current ones right now are kind of rare, and I kind of like that because when you find like the anvil or something, you're excited about that. But we may add more of those or something, so you can kind of target some of the vendors. One idea I like, which is hasn't been, we decided we want to do it, but I like adding like a cooking recipe that increases your reputation gain for certain vendors, and we can kind of theme that to like different vendors, like um, a wolf stew for the armor smith or something like, or for the weaponsmith or something like that. And so then you can kind of choose which one you want, which cooking recipe you want on the pot to kind of improve the reputation. So those are some ideas. For sure, we're here. You hear you. It's something we talk about internally. Probably the first thing that came when we came back to the office over the weekend was everybody talking about the subject. But so there's that, and then the ossuary. Yeah, the ossuary is our latest kind of furnishing that we added to the lodge, and we plan on adding more. If you look at the roadmap, we also are planning on adding the transmutation device and the critter habitat. But the ossuary, we are going to flesh it out some more, no pun intended. But right now it requires like 3 years max to get the buff, which is like a reputation gained with vendor system. We may do something more where if you put more ears into it or more items, more rewards you can get. So the minimum threshold to get the buff would be 3, but then if you want more things, you can put more stuff into it and get more, maybe for favor items after the week or something like that. Yeah, if you just get a lot of ears or something, you could just juice it up if you want and get more return there. So there's a lot of options there that we could do. Definitely hear you on that one, though.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you for the question, Caleb.
Yeah, good question.
All right, we got Mika Nidra. They found their join button. And then, like I said, we have like 40 plus questions. So after this one, I'll just take questions at random, not necessarily in order because we're not going to get to all of them. But I'm reading chat as well, so if you have any questions, I could just rapid fire them to Chris myself. So until Mika joins, I have a question for you, Chris. People are asking about duos. Do we want to also open a duo queue as well? Because we have solos, we have mixed, which can be duo, trio, or even solo if you are crazy. But we want to have a duo specific to make fights more balanced.
Yeah. I think we're not against the idea of duos. I think we could do duos. Right now we have 2 modes, right? We have solo and mixed. And so in mix you can queue duos, you can queue trios, you could queue even solos. Something I do is I do queue solo sometimes in mixed because it's like there's less players or less groups, and so it can kind of be more chill. You're kind of like the mouse, or I don't know. You could just you just kind of like just blend in there. But I can understand that if you want to play duos and only play against other duos, I totally get that. We leaned on just having these 2 modes for early access release just to concentrate kind of the queues. So the queues are fast, and one thing I do like about our game is the queues are fast. Like if you queue, you boom, get in there. I don't hear anyone complaining about that yet. And so as the concurrency, as the game grows, totally that could be an option to add a duos queue. So we're going to continue to listen. It's more of something I'm curious about the community, how much you think this would be important in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's our current thought on it. Open to the idea, but nothing to announce just yet.
I kind of agree as well. We don't want to dilute the queues even more with like 3 different modes. All right, we got Mika Nidra finally. We got him in.
Yo, I am so sorry about that. Thank you for
No
getting
worries.
me in here. The game is also very awesome. I really appreciate your guys' work. I just have a couple questions about the classes. I know Wizard and Paladin are next. Do you have any idea of when they're coming out? What are some other classes you're thinking about? And do you think we could maybe one day get like class specifications, like specialized classes, like after a certain level, like a hunter could change into a ranger, or maybe like a trap master and maybe specialize some of those skills?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, the next two classes, as you mentioned, are the Wizard and Paladin. The Wizard, we're hoping to get something playable in the spring. You know, those of you who joined us during the alpha playtest know that we have this thing internally we call like bronze, silver, gold, platinum in terms of quality or completeness. And you know, when we introduced the rogue, we told players, "Hey, look, the rogue is in silver state right now. It's, you know, there's some things to improve. He doesn't have all of his abilities yet, etc." Now all the classes are mostly gold, although the rogue doesn't have the third weapon yet, which we consider, you know, that is a requirement to be like actually gold or platinum, like fully done. Like we'd be comfortable shipping gold master with, which is, you know, we're on the road with through early access. But anyways, you should see the wizard come out in some sort of state, hopefully at least silver to gold, during the spring. You know, it's one thing Andre is working on himself, actually. But anyway, yeah. So that's the deal with the wizard. We have a lot of exciting things to experiment and to do with the wizard that I don't think you've seen in a game like this before. You know, I'm really proud of all the class design that we've done for the classes. I feel like, for example, one thing, you know, with the rogue in particular is I feel it's like the best version of a rogue that I've played in an RPG kind of game like this. Like, you know, it's Phantom Dagger, Visage, um, Phantom Veil. These abilities are super fun and a lot of skill expression, stuff like that. So we put a lot of time and effort into the different classes, and so hopefully you'll see that with the wizard. Really excited for that. And then yeah, the paladin after that, you know, we don't have an exact time on this because it's so hard to know. But it will be sometime after the wizard, hopefully maybe late summer. Don't know, don't it's hard to say right now. But yeah, also excited for the paladin. You know, Greenwood itself, one thing that we try to do with the zones is like attach a class to the zone's fantasy. And Greenwood is kind of like the paladin zone, but we don't have the paladin yet, which is kind of funny, but crazy. But yeah, so the paladin is another one I'm super excited about. Some really interesting things there, stuff players would expect to have with the paladin. You know, he'll have some support aspects to him and buffs, and these he'll be able to buff other players, that sort of thing, but do a lot of other fun things. You know, one thing I mentioned in an interview, and I think in the last Meet the Devs, is I really love this idea of the paladin being kind of like the police in a zone, and so the paladin can sense, you know, injustice. You know, he's the police, and so, you know, he could know if players are ganking other players or maybe third partying. I don't know, like fun stuff like that. And so we will be doing a lot of experimental stuff like that with the paladin. Um, and then yeah, after that I have endless ideas for classes, some that are traditional, some that are unique. And you know, I would love to just like nerd out and share all these. Like Andre kind of knows what some of them are, but it's just too soon to do that. But I'm so anxious to be able to talk about some of those ideas in the future.
Yeah, in a future episode for sure.
Yeah, I'm also really interested. Yeah, I'm also really interested what the community is excited for as well, in particular when it comes to classes. So feel free to leave that in the Discord and we will read that and take that into consideration. One thing we could do is like talk about a lot of ideas of them and have the community vote for them, perhaps. I always love that idea, but we'll have to see.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah.
All right, I got a quick question from chat for you, Chris, and then meanwhile I'll invite someone else.
Okay.
What is our stance on so it's quote, can you ask about more stressless game mode for people that like the game and want to play it in a more casual way, maybe full loot mode only or PvE mode? I know we had some plans with that with the farm map, maybe the tutorial map as a like a practice range. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and then meanwhile I'll invite someone else to I'll wait for your answer first, I guess.
Yeah. You know, we get that feedback too. We get feedback want some more accessible experience, and some players who want some more like hardcore, end game competitive experience. And we want both are important. The next patch, the content patch we're having in the spring, is going to have a more close quarter dungeon map, which will be a totally different experience. It will kind of feel a little bit like fighting in the crypts, or not the crypts, what am I thinking of, the graveyard, or like the castle, that kind of thing. And so a lot of different abilities will be interesting there. Like think about using um uh yeah, anyway, so that will be a little more hardcore map that we're going to be adding. And then also we're talking about doing a Greenwood night map, which would be like a nighttime version of Greenwood, and it won't just be a cosmetic change, it'll be like some gameplay differences as well. We'll be talking more about that in the future. So those are some things for more end game, more hardcore things. But another thing that we're talking about doing as well is like converting Goldbrook, which is the tutorial, into more of a social space. So players will be able to queue into that, and then if they die, they just respawn in the zone. They don't have to requeue. And it's more of it's not about like loot and extraction necessarily. It's more of a social space where you could test your build, duel players, fight against test dummies, and use voice chat to just hang out with players. So that is something that we're also talking about adding, hopefully in that spring patch. So that would be our first foray into something like that players talking about, of something more entry level, experimental, that they can kind of learn the game.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry, I'm just everywhere right now. I'm answering people in chat myself, and I'm inviting this.
Yo, what up, boys?
Yo, what up?
Yo, all right. So I think we have a question that a lot of people are hoping for, and I know and this is mostly for Nbani.
They're counting on you.
Somewhat, somewhat of a competitive player yourself. I have a big question here about the philosophy behind balancing of some sort. Rogue has entered the roots. The hunter has the trap with the stun, but the warrior, then on the other hand, we give him something that is the rampage, that does insane damage. You're immune to every stun, everything. Has insane movement, where you have to dodge a couple of times to make somewhat worth of it. And I want to know, because then obviously the Warhorn again makes it insanely broken. And I want to hear kind of like your guys' philosophy behind it, like how did Rampage become, and the Warhorn, how did this go through? When you tested it internally, like what was the philosophy behind it when everything else has something of like a counter, but this doesn't? I would love to hear, and I think a lot of people are interested to see the philosophy behind this ability and Warhorn. Me myself also very excited.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey designing the classes for this game, and building strengths and weaknesses for the classes. One thing, Warrior feels really strong right now. Warriors I play every class, but the Warriors one I do play a lot, because it's very easy for the Warrior to feel not good in a game like this. Just because you'll get trapped, you'll get snared, you'll get shot from range, you'll be stunned, and it just kind of feels like you don't have your fantasy with the class. And for a long time, players gave the feedback, the Warrior doesn't feel like a tank. I just feel like I just run away. Like players fight me and I run away. And so which traditionally in RPGs, like in WoW, we always had that problem. You just run away around a pillar, like when someone's shooting you, which is like you're the Warrior. It should feel like, what's my fantasy is I charge in there and I'm like, a juggernaut kind of thing. And so we did a lot of changes there. Two additions that we added was, one is a trait I think called pain management, that when you enrage, you get like an absorption on you. And so you pop your enrage, which is a core ability the Warrior has. He has 3 different enrages. And when you're enraged, it's like, watch out, the Warrior's scary. And he's also kind of defensive. And so he feels like you can dive in and charge, and it accentuates that fantasy. And then, so that's kind of how we landed there. And then he also has another trait too that I forget what it's called, Andre, but it clears like wound on you passively.
Yeah.
Which the Warrior constantly complained, like, I'm always wounded, like I get hit the most. The Warrior is a class that gets takes the most damage. You know, we don't have the metric right now, but I would assume, you know, especially in squads, the warrior is the one that kind of takes the most hits. And so we added that trait as well, to help accentuate this fantasy, to make the warrior not feel just like hit, like I poke and I run away, you know, kind of feeling. And then the Warhorn, you know, we have this mechanic called the class tools or tool belt. And so every class has different items that they could use in there, right? Rogues have poison dart, smoke bomb. Priests can have an absorption shield, and later on they have a card to clear all afflictions on targets and stuff like that. And so the Warhorn is one that I felt natural. It's kind of like a rage generation mechanic. And then it also does, I don't know if this is actually in right now, but it does, like, it's supposed to do an AoE. Yeah, it's AoE taunt or whatever. So it's kind of like their taunt thing. And so, yeah, but I can, you know, the combination of, like you're saying, the combination of Warhorn and some of the traits and, you know, Wrecking Ball and Rampage is really strong. And so I do agree with that. And so we'll probably do some surgical changes there to kind of balance that out. But yeah, that is, if you ask like what was the history and what was the thinking, those are kind of all the thinkings for those individual pieces. And when they come together, yeah, they can be kind of strong. But yeah, we'll you know,
guys have any
again,
plans, like kind of like how to somewhat maybe like Rampage for unstoppable, insane damage, and movement in one ability that you then can just spam Warhorns and pretty much use it endlessly. Could there maybe be like remove unstoppable from Rampage, or is that something you definitely do not want to do? You know?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now. You know, I don't want to say anything that I'll regret. But you know, one option with Rampage could be to reduce how many hits it does. It does kind of last a while. One quirk with it is that you're uncontrollable. You can't actually cancel it, and so you have to commit to it, which is supposed to be kind of its like, you know, I want to say drawback, but it's kind of like its cost to use it. And so anyway, we have a bunch of ideas on how we could tune that. It's not really that big of a challenge, but I can understand why it's strong right now. But anyway, that's kind of like the history and all that.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
All right. Thanks for the question. Yeah.
I said in chat, you guys don't know this is the nerf version of both the Warhorn and Rampage. It had one extra attack in the beginning. Rampage was super
okay.
cracked.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we probably also want to improve the other two as well.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. We'll see. But yeah.
Warrior's missing one ability in that bucket as well. He only has two, and he only has one ability in the first bucket, so there is more work to be done for sure. Okay, we have time for a few more questions, but just to letting you guys know, there's no way we can answer everyone's question. But Song told me that if you have any further questions, fill out the surveys. Chris and Song themselves are gonna go over every like response, and there's an entry for like questions and suggestions and stuff. So he's gonna post the survey in the announcement channel. So yeah, it would be awesome to know what you guys think. And also, Song wanted me to tell you guys to please don't directly mention developers in the Discord, because we have gained like 2,000 members each day, and it's hard to like respond to everyone. We do have the ticket system if you guys need like assistance with something specifically. And we also have like what's it called, the feedback forum, because there's like feedback everywhere and we just can't keep track of everything. And yeah, one last thing is, if you like the game and you haven't already, would be awesome if you guys could leave it a Steam review. That would be very appreciated. But the main thing I wanted to say was, if you have more questions and we don't get to it, just survey. Chris will see it for sure. Chris, do you have time for a few more questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, one I did see in chat, you know, a lot of questions about the priest, and we didn't really talk about the priest very much. But you know, the priest, I think, especially solo, has some challenges with rogues in particular, I think. And you know, with healers or classes that can heal or support, or the niche classes, and she is kind of like the lowest played class right now, which totally makes sense. You know, I worked on for those of you that don't know, I worked on World of Warcraft, balancing the classes and designing classes there. And the healers is something that I always spent a lot of attention improving, because they're kind of the unsung heroes, and the ones that don't. They're not the flashy ones designers love working on. They like working the DPS ones usually. And so I do love actually support and healers. Usually I always main healers in any game I play, even like shooters or whatever. And so, we do have a lot of it. We she is top of mind for me for sure. Um, there's some things that I think she could have some improvements on. One is like her escape. Ascend is kind of supposed to be like her escape if someone comes on you, but I feel like it kind of puts you more in a vulnerable state. And so there's some improvements we could do with that. Like if a player is on you in melee, a way to get away. Maybe if you played it's called air vault, but it's kind of like a disengage kind of ability in the hunter. If you're in melee and you disengage, you bounce off of them and it goes further. So one idea I have is like maybe if you ascend off of target, you hit them and you fly back further as an escape kind of thing. That's something I'm thinking about, but haven't really committed to anything there yet. But there's a few things I think with the priest that we could improve a little bit on escape, basically, because in the end, any support, whether it's the priest or the paladin in the future or any other class like that, is the healer in a squad encounter, is the tank. And so you have to keep that in mind. And we don't want to make this game where the priest is like has the highest armor, highest health, a sponge, a damage sponge. That isn't going to be fun for anybody. So you do want to give the class some tools to to play as kind of like the PvP tank. And so anyway, that is like top of mind, and I do think that there's some improvements that could be made there. But generally, I'm pretty happy with her kit. She has like one of the strongest abilities in the game, which is an AoE stun. That's also sticky target or soft targeting, and yeah, she's great solo against, especially in green, so much undead, and yeah. Anyway,
yeah, awesome. Someone asking what is our stance on raising the level cap, even if it's just for fun, even if it doesn't do anything. And yeah, then I'll invite someone else for a question. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So we don't have anything to announce just yet exactly on that, but it is something that we do want to do, not just for the player, but for the vendors. We want it so that when you obviously in the lodge there is the bed, and then the ossuary, and they both accentuate and improve how fast you could level up yourself and then the vendors. And so obviously when you max level out a vendor, you have everything from them. But there is some ideas we have, and like items that some kind of reward we can give you for, basically, I don't want to say prestige because it's such a specific thing, but basically, like, yeah, if you like level them past your player character past 20, and then the vendor past what their level cap is, that you get some other reward that is interesting for late game. And so we have a lot of ideas there. Nothing to announce just yet, but for sure it's something we're going to be doing, is some sort of additional reward for that. So that's really why we haven't just like raised the level cap to unlimited, basically, for the player character. I do think that could be fun, and maybe we'll think about it. Like maybe we could just do that. But I just really want to get that reward in there too when we do it, which isn't in the scope just yet.
Awesome. All right, Chris, give me a number from 1 to 30, and I'll invite that person on stage.
1 through 30. Oh wow. Okay. I don't know. 18.
I have to count 18 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, you said at 1 to 30. I don't know.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Bacon Lord. You picked Bacon Lord. All right, let's see. And then, yeah, the next time when I count, I'll ask you a question meanwhile.
Okay,
Bacon
Hi, good
Lord.
evening. The game's fun. I love it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yo, thank you.
Glad you like it.
Hey, so my only question for you guys, hunter stamina and being able to actually kite remotely.
Oh, Mel is vindicated.
Yeah, so you just mean like she runs out of stamina too quickly.
Um, kind of, or just not even being able to use it because you just die. You just get perma
Right.
CC'd, stagger chained.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So stamina, stamina is important part of the combat system and part of like the back and forth in gameplay is just that um uh smart use of when you use stamina for like evade and for sprint, that sort of thing is really important. And so it is like the value it is because of kind of intentions on like how lethality and how we want like how long combat encounters could be. For example, if we just double stamina, it will just kind of, I don't know, maybe perhaps double out the combat length, and it creates all these cascading issues. So, however, I do get what you mean on the is get ganked by a class. Um, sometimes it's like hard to you evade twice because you feel like you have to get a reasonable distance, and then boom, you're out of stamina, and that's all you kind of got. And so I get that. One idea I had in a trait actually that I want to add is when the hunter gets hit, she gains stamina. Um, and so if you whenever you're meleeed or something, it kind of feeds you stamina a little bit. So it makes it so that if she is kiting someone, never gets hit. It's kind of like how it is right now. But if you are being hit by a player, she has a little more stamina to work with. And so anyway, this is a trait we're thinking about adding. No promises yet, but I understand the concern, and I play a hunter a lot as well, solo especially. So I know what you mean.
I mean, it's even just like an iframe thing. Like you use the dodge, but you still get connected. Can't even use
Yeah,
the
is there
stamina.
like a class in particular?
It's only
Is it
just
the
the other two melee classes that
right?
Or you saying you get
We
to
did
either
see this bug.
not good and you can kite them down. They run out of stamina and then you just auto win, or they land the
Right.
CC. You can't iframe it, and that you can't get away. You just die.
Yeah, there is a bug that we are fixing right now, um, with the rogue where one of his abilities you can't iframe, uh, even though you should. And so there's like little things like that that we need to fix that I think will help
That
alleviate
would
this too.
make sense if that's occurring, because I'm not missing the iframes, but it's going
Yeah.
through. I'm so confused. That and the warriors just one tapping you was such a weird thing. I realized that was a bug today. So
Yeah, another thing that we want to improve on the hunter, um, and because bramble trap should be something that melee sort of, it should be the one trap that melee sort of fear. Right now it's just kind of an AoE snare, but something that originally what I had an idea too crazy at the time, but maybe we do something in that ballpark, which is like you couldn't use evade or sprint while in bramble trap. That would be like really strong against melee. But we didn't do that because we thought it was too crazy. But maybe we could do something similar to that to address like melee in particular with that trap. Another thing we're talking about doing is like the beetle could perhaps see stealth units, and can, there's some other issues with the beetle we have to fix with like the collision on it and stuff like that. But anyway, um yeah, I hear you on that for sure.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you for the question. We got time for one more, I'm being told. So Chris, you got give me one more number.
All right,
1 to
final
30.
final question.
Final question.
All right, how about one? That'll be easy for you.
Oh, that's easy. All right, so this person's been waiting the longest as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Oh, hello. Actually didn't think I would be picked. Nice.
Hello.
So I just have one question. Will there ever be a player market, or are you considering it? And if so, are you guys aware with the issues that usually come with it, like RMT?
Yes. I did respond to this question in the Discord. Some player asked about this. Originally, when we made the game, it was on the roadmap to do. But then after talking about it a lot of the team we play Tarkov and other games in genre. Obviously, I come from WoW, working on that game, and it has an auction house, and Diablo has an auction house, etc. There are a lot of challenges to the auction house, building it. You mentioned RMT is a big one. There's other issues of just how it affects the economy, and there's some coolness to the game right now when you go into the item and rare and you're like, wow, this is cool, right? If it's on the auction house, everything's just a gold price, and you just won't have that same emotion anymore. And so usually what games do, for example Tarkov, is they start taking things that you can't put on the auction house, and then that becomes weird because it's like, well, can this work in the auction house, can it not? And over time, I think, especially in Tarkov, more and more things weren't put onto the flea market, their auction house. And so, yeah, it just causes a lot of design cursed problems. I do like the auction house in some ways, which is like, I don't know, it's just a fun kind of community thing. It's a quality of life thing. If you really need this one item, you could buy it from the auction house. Some players, there's somebody on the WoW team that I worked with, like they just had spreadsheets open. Just all they would do is like that was their game, was the auction house. Even so much so, we created an app that just had the auction house on it. So I get, like, there's pros and cons to the auction house. I'm not against, like 100% against the idea, or we're not. It's just that there are a lot of challenges with it, and there's so many other things that I think are more important right now. But it is something that I think we'll keep listening to the community, and if we do add one, we want to do it right. And so, yeah, I did respond to that thread as well with kind of the things I'm saying here. And so just kind of open to what you guys say in the community about that. And yeah, but nothing to announce just yet.
Okay. Thank you so much. It is good to hear that you guys are thinking about it like this currently, because I think a lot of people are very much against having an auction house with, as you mentioned, with all the issues that come with it, especially
Yeah.
knowing like what happens in Tarkov and other games like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
good question. I'm glad you asked that one, because I did notice a lot of questions in Discord about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we're gonna answer that question more in the future as well. It's one that keeps popping up.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine. All right. Well, I think that we're at time right now. So again, if your question was not answered, and I know it wasn't for a bunch of people because we have a bunch of you in, which we're very grateful for, we have a survey in the announcement channel. So if you could fill that up, that would help a lot. And also, we do read those. Chris and Song they read all those surveys. So yeah, thank you for joining today's episode. I hope you guys continue enjoying the game. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being patient. We are, fixing as we go. And yeah, you guys have been very nice today. A lot of good people in chat.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy doing these, and yeah, we'll pop into Discord to answer some other questions. And like Andre said, please fill out the survey, because we do read that. And next Meet the Devs, we probably will talk about that survey and things that surfaced in it. So yeah, thank you everybody, and hope to see you in the game.
Yeah, we'll see you guys in Greenwood. I'm playing a hunter, so come
right.
get me solo.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.